now. And we will share the slides for this as well as the recording itself will go out. So we before we jump in, we want to know a little bit about who's in the room with us today. So if you could take a second in the chat to introduce your name and affiliation. And just for a little bit of fun, we just got through a big holiday that everybody has different kinds of, meals and cultures and traditions. And so Thanksgiving happens to be one of my favorite. I was born on Thanksgiving Eve, so I feel a specific affinity to it. So I was just wanted to, as you are adding to the chat, you can say, I think maybe there's something wrong with the chat.
Some raised hands, so the chat is disabled. We will fix that straight away. Thank you for pointing that out.
Try it again. It should now be fixed that everybody should be able to.
There we go. Essence, thanks. Yeah. Introduce yourself in the chat. It's always great to know who's in the room. There's a bunch of people here. Some of you we know, some of you are new names, and be great to know who's here. And then the best thing you ate over the holiday weekend, is that?
Yeah, best thing you ate over the holiday is the sweet potato pie. One of my favorites as well. Absolutely.
Mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes. I love stuffing as well. I love all those mac and cheese.
Sides.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Ooh, roasted pig.
Filipino cuisine, so good.
Mac and cheese, Brussels sprouts. Ooh, I love a good roasted Brussels sprout. I used to hate Brussels sprouts when a kid because I didn't ever have them prepared well. And then as an adult, I had them prepared correctly. And then I was like, oh, these are wonderful. Creamed onions. I'd like to know how that happens.
And I also love pecan pie, Daisy. It's so great to see representation from so much of the state, as always. Folks from all corners represented here. Really, really excited to see that too.
Heidi, I'll have to get your cauliflower recipe to understand how that could be the best thing you had over that holiday. Oh yeah, we really do have a nice smattering from all over the state here. Super excited. So happy you all could be here. Keep those coming in the chat, and we are going to introduce our panelists. Dante and Heidi. I'm going to let you guys do quick introductions for yourselves because we don't like to read bios here. We want to know a little bit about you. So Dante, if you would like to introduce yourself, and then Heidi as well.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dante de Tablan. I evaluate community schools in Massachusetts. But before that, I was a community school coordinator at Ben Franklin High School in Baltimore City. And I love the folks that are here. I worked with Heidi before at the United Way of Central Maryland. And so it is such an honor and pleasure to be here with you today.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heidi Stevens. First of all, don't let Dante fool you. Dante is the guru of community schools and of community school coordinators. Yes, I did work with Dante. I was a community school coordinator for close to 7 school years. Worked with the United Way of Central Maryland. Right now, I am the director of community schools. We have 6 community schools in Baltimore City. And I'm also the director of Neighborhood Zone in Poppleton, which is in Southwest Baltimore. Thank you for having me.
All right, and with that, we are going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Dante for a presentation. And then we'll be monitoring that Q&A section throughout, and we'll take some questions, and then we'll also get into some discussion later, and Heidi will have also a chance to reflect. So Dante, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Ellie. Thank you for that kind comments, Heidi. I miss working with you. So, surviving high school transfers. All right. One of the things that I had noticed as a community school coordinator is that our kids, especially in the schools that we're in, especially if they're community schools, tend to move a lot, tend to transfer. And so it has some ramifications. And one of the things I really wanted to figure out is what's the relationship between students transferring and their graduation, and also if they get into college. And so, yes, next slide, please. Just press the return. Yeah. Okay, so first, I'd like for us to take a look at it through a couple of lenses. One theory is that our schools reproduce hierarchies in society. At the same time, schools can also develop agency among students so that they would be able to address these inequities. So there can be tension in these two perspectives. Next slide, please. So here was my plan, and these are the method that I used. So I tracked 6,810 ninth graders from 2012 to 2018, and I took the whole cohort of ninth graders in Baltimore City, okay, during that period, 2012 to 2018. And I used survival analysis to take a look at when did they actually transferred and what are the hazard risks related to the students' characteristics and then also the school's characteristics. Okay, that was my first question. And then I used odds ratios that could tell me what are the odds of if they transferred, and then also looking at other variables, what are the odds of graduation? And then what are the odds of entering college? Okay, next slide, please. So first, I'd like to appreciate the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, and who allowed me to give me permission to take a look at the data from from MSDE, from Higher Education Commission, from the Labor Department, and from the National Student Clearinghouse. And throughout all of these institutions, I was able to take a look at student records, particularly their attendance, their enrollment, achievement, and transfer data, college enrollment, including their first math and remedial coursework. I also looked at their jobs, if they actually worked during high school and after high school, also apprenticeship data, and then if they enrolled in out-of-state college. Next slide, please. So let me do a quick definition here of what a student transfer is. That's when they withdraw from school and enter another, or are terminated during the school year and after the first day of school. And transfers can occur during the academic year or summertime. Next slide, please. Now, okay, who transfers and at what hazard rates? So on the left, the column on the left is groups who tend to transfer at a slower rate, okay? those with missing math scores, those who had a suspension, white students compared to Black students, students who are employed, and those that have a higher schools with a higher concentration of farm for eligible students. So you'd see on the left-hand side, those are the percentages basically. So the highest ones are those that have missing math scores. Now, groups who tend to transfer at a faster rate, and this is what I would like to focus on, is those schools that have a higher concentration of special education students, chronic absentees, and for those with math scores, as the math score of the high school student goes higher, they also tend to transfer at a faster rate. And these numbers here, 0.05, 0.01, 0.001, those are the levels of significance. So the more sensitive it is, like the 0.001, that's pretty powerful in terms of the accuracy of that analysis. Next slide, please. Okay, now looking at odds ratios. Who graduates and at what odds? Okay, groups who have a lower odds of graduation, and I'd like for us to focus on this. Students who are employed, okay? Those with missing math scores. Unemployed and chronically absent students. Students who transferred, okay? White students compared to Black students, and those who are chronically absent. These are the ones that have lower odds of graduating high school. On the right, groups who have higher odds of graduation are those with math scores that as they go higher, they tend to graduate, higher odds of graduation. And if you're female compared to males. Next slide, please. Now, who enters college and at what odds? Those who have lower odds of entering college are those who had a suspension, had an IEP, those who transferred, those who are eligible for free introduced meals program, white students compared to Black students, schools that have higher percentage of school farms, eligible students, schools that have higher percentage of school transfers, and schools that have a higher percentage of special education students. On the right column, higher odds of attending college or entering college, other races, but not Black or white, female, and those as math scores go higher, they have higher odds of attending college. Next slide, please. So of the 6,810 ninth graders that I followed, 34% of them, or about a little bit more than a third, transferred schools. 63% of them graduated high school, and then a third entered college. So let that sink in a little bit in terms of, in this particular cohort, in this particular school district, these are the percentages. So a good percentage actually transferred schools, and then almost an equal percentage entered college. Next slide, please. So transferring schools is associated with lower odds of graduation and college entry. And the higher the school transfer rate is, the lower the odds of college entry for those students in that school. And that most transfers occur in the ninth grade. Next slide, please. Policy implications. We need to reduce transfers. We need to promote youth employment, but I need to qualify that. And we need to reduce chronic absenteeism. That's why I'm glad that we're meeting today and talking about attendance. Next slide, please. Prevent higher concentration of special education students in a few schools. Also, prevent higher concentration of school transfers in a few schools. And we need to track every child. Next slide, please. Here are some of the research implications. We need to monitor transfers from pre-K to 12. We might even consider monitoring it all the way to 16. Find out why students move. When I looked at the data, the reasons why they moved were not there. Investigate youth employment as a potential protective factor and test the effectiveness of community schools in reducing transfers. This is something that a lot of folks in this room, virtual room, can really take part of. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of our practice, we need to track students across grades. And even if they leave Maryland, we need to find out what happened to them, even if they went abroad. We need to develop interventions that reduce transfers and then use transfers, consider using transfers as a key performance indicator for community schools to provide supports for transfer students and their families. Next slide, please. So here's the thing. If we do not intervene, students will continue to have lower odds of graduation and college entry. Okay, I want us to really think about that. If we do not intervene, if it's business as usual, they will continue to have lower odds of graduation and college entry. Just think of those percentages if we do not intervene. Next slide, please. So I want to thank you for what you do every day to change the odds for our children and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante.
Next slide, can you just put the next slide, please? So this is my contact information, just in case you need to talk about this, the results, and then also if you have other questions about looking at chronic absenteeism, student transfers and such. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dante. Your research is really important to us. And as a former community school coordinator, you know how much these interventions that we do around attendance matter.
Oh, yeah.
Our students across the state face all kinds of challenges in order to attend school, whether they are facing systemic barriers or one's individual in their lives. At the high school level, right, we think about employment and things like that, and elementary, there are other factors. And so as we're engaging this conversation around the research, we do know that community schools is an evidence-based strategy to impact attendance in a positive direction. So it would be great to hear a little bit from the practice side and how that happens, right? How do we actually impact this data in a positive direction to make sure more kids are attending, less transfer and mobility, so that we get kids graduating and on the path to success, whether it's college or not, or career stuff. But I think Heidi Stevens brings that critical perspective. So it'd be great to turn it over. And I just want to last say, if you do have questions, which I noticed are starting to bubble up already, please post them in the Q&A and we will pose them at after Heidi Stevens adds her reflections. So Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, Dante. I remember when you were working on this dissertation, so I'm glad to see the results of it. It was a long time coming, so congratulations. But my perspective was challenged in several ways. Number one, I've always thought about the impact of course, school attendance. I used to do a lot of work with Baltimore City schools around attendance, but I never really thought about how students moving from one school and transferring to another school, whether it's during the summer or whether it is during the school year, how that impacts, if you're in ninth grade, how that impacts whether or not you're going to be able to, or whether you go to college, and how that impacts your college life. So that was a real eye opener for me. But I'm really not surprised about the connection between chronic absenteeism and transfers, because some of those same barriers that students face and not being able to come to school are the same barriers that they face with mobility while they transfer. So you think about, and thinking about Baltimore City, but if you think about the state, if you think about the country, you think about those issues that have been they're really out of the control of schools and families, and it really goes down to policy. You think about things like housing, substandard housing, or unaffordable housing. That's one of the major reasons why students are chronically absent. And another reason why they probably transfer is because families can't afford the homes that they have. They're being evicted, they have to move from one place to the other during the school year. But the great thing is that we have this community school strategy. And this community school strategy, because of the resources that we're able to garnish, we're able to have in our schools, we're able to bring about for families, really makes a difference for our families who are facing housing issues. So being able to bring about that stability, being able to have people embedded in your schools who can help families when they're becoming evicted. I'm thinking of a program that the United Way of Central Maryland has called ACE, brand new program. But if you are facing eviction, this person will go to court with you. This advocate will go to court with you and to help you to stay in your home. Not only that, but you'll be able to get help with rent and or first or second month's security deposit. So there are resources that are available that community schools have that can help with those issues that are barriers to attendance. So community schools are equipped to help families to make choices that will help to impact the life of their particular student. One thing that I also enjoy about the community school movement and community schools is the way that community schools coordinators are able to support schools and understanding the importance of attendance and understanding the importance of having students to stay or families to stay in their schools for a longer period of times. So being able to create welcoming environments is really important. Being able to increase that sense of belonging, being able to get family input on things that are important and solutions to things that are important to students and families. Being able to help families who are struggling, who need special education support, and being able to have community school coordinators that either lead or support school teams. I know that in Baltimore City, for instance, coordinators are either supporting or they're leading school teams like attendance teams. They're also leading or supporting teams like school wellness teams, where you have different people from different disciplines, a school social worker, school psychologist. Everyone who is around this table is able to impact a student. They know student stories. They know why students are absent. They know why they may be in line to be transferred, and being able to leverage those relationships with families to be able to say, hey, I know that you're about to move. Let's talk about those reasons and what we can do to help you, to support you, so that maybe you have another alternative other than thinking about moving. So community schools and coordinators are well equipped to be able to do those things. Another thing that was really interesting to me was thinking about those ninth grade students and how it seems like ninth graders are most likely to transfer out of schools, and thinking about being able to do things like warm handoffs between families. So you have this community school coordinator network. They know one another. If you know that your students are moving to this high school and going to this high school in the fall, being able to do a warm handoff between this community school coordinator. Hey, I have Ellie Mitchell. She's going to be attending your school next year. Look out for Ellie. Make sure that, you contact her family. Here's her family's contact information. And that incoming coordinator, being able to reach out and to be able to build those relationships quickly. That way that family knows that, hey, this school has the great resources as my elementary school did. Let's sort of stick around because we know that they're here to help us. They want us to succeed and they want to work with us on helping their students to succeed. So there are supports out there through community schools. There are also out of school time programs. One of our programs at United Way in high school, Ben Franklin. It's called Grow Homes. And that particular OST programs provides stipends for students. Students want to work. They want to earn their own money. And some of them have to support their families. So being able to provide supports, OST programs that provide stipends for students that will help them to stay in school and will help them to have a job and learn a trade or some type of experience doing something absolutely helps. It helps to prepare them for life outside of high school. Maybe it is college, maybe it is career, but it really does help to prepare them. But those are things that community schools do provide and that they can continue to provide. So, just really working it and helping community school coordinators and working with community schools to continue to focus on climate and student attendance, and really to equip that entire school community, I think will really make the difference. But policy is definitely something, working with our legislators on housing, on transportation. It's interesting in Poppleton, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and it really goes right to policy, but Poe Homes was the first actually housing project in Baltimore City, was built in the 50s and the late 50s, had never had any real upkeep or repairs really, since then, maybe one or two, but nothing major. That housing development closed over the summer. People received vouchers to move literally across the city, East Baltimore, Northeast Baltimore, and they are living there, which means now they're not able to go to that school that they used to go to. That school had at least 60 or 70 students to transfer out over the summer because of housing, because of substandard housing, because now things are trying to be made right when maybe before policy would have been there, it would have been made right earlier. So these are the types of things that students have no control over, families have no control over, and schools have no control over, but those are things that we continue to look at, things that we continue to work on to make sure that we are providing the best that we can, the best support, and just really make sure that families know that we're there, that we care, that will help them to continue to move forward and will help us to know what to advocate for. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi. I really appreciate your perspective as the practitioner here, commenting on the research and how it really matters in real practice, right? Because community schools can mitigate those factors that are big and systemic in terms of housing and transportation. But I think what they really do well is build those connections and relationships so that when transfers happen, we can do the handoff, but we can build the connection so that folks are trying their best and wanting to come to school on their own as students when they're in high school, or when they're younger, with their families, getting them there. Those are, I think, critical practices that the community school engages in. We have a couple of questions already that we can throw out to both of you. And I wanted to start actually, there's a research question, Dante, that I really would love to dig into from one of our participants who's wondering about this math score, why students with higher math scores end up transferring, and if you found anything in your research that's the reason.
Yeah, thank you. And I love that question, Kristen, because I was also wondering about that. So the higher the math scores, they have more the tendency to transfer. So higher risks of transferring. And so my thought was, first off, it really requires for me to do a follow-up study on this to really find the reason why, to dig deeper. So this may need to be a qualitative study to find out if what's the reason why they moved. Because again, I told you that I only, when I looked at the data, there were no reasons why they changed schools. I just saw this pattern that for those that have higher, as their math scores go higher, they tend to move. And what I can see, and again, this is just my hypothesis, in my experience as a coordinator, the reason why they moved was not that we were not meeting their needs, especially those students who want to be, yes, they were looking for advanced math courses. They wanted to be challenged. And so they wanted to be in an environment where their math chops will be further challenged. So, but yeah, it's again, that's my just a hypothesis. Um, yeah,
One
thank you
thing
very
I
much.
just want to add for those of you who are not from the Baltimore City area who are on this webinar, one of the important contexts of this is that in Baltimore City, almost all middle schools and all high schools are schools of choice. So you are not assigned a zone school. You have to apply and pick schools through a choice process. And there's a lot of pressures on students to make decisions, and they don't always have all the information in front of them when they do it. So students are often traveling long distances to get to their schools. Maybe they thought that was going to be okay when they started out, and then it turns out that distance and that travel is really oppressive in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe they pick a specialty school and realize that maybe that specialty is not for them when they begin. So I think we have increased mobility in Baltimore City, or we see increased mobility in Baltimore City, in part a little bit by the school choice model that does also offer students more opportunities to explore choices, but then puts in some definite challenges. You know, a student may get to a school and realize, as Heidi had suggested, or Dante suggested, that they don't have the right curriculum for them when they get there. And so that contributes to some of the mobility beyond the like more issues of you know, more serious issues that might affect like chronic health problems or other kinds of things. So I just wanted to add that additional context, because and that is different than a lot of districts.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that, Ellie, because that really creates an environment where there's a whole lot more movement that's happening. But I also just wanted to highlight something here in terms of who enters college and at what odds. I found that there were lower odds of white students
Yeah, that's an interesting.
entering college. And that initially surprised me. I thought, oh, what's going on here? Because I was just thinking, I was assuming that white students will have, you know, better odds going to college. What are we missing here? What are we overlooking a portion of our kids that um that are you know, that may need the supports that we need, that, you know, them and their families have in order to actually succeed. So career and college. So just want to point that out.
Heidi, you had your hand up a minute ago, and I just want to make sure you got the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. I think it was sort of the answer, but I was thinking about, and then Liz touched on it, Dr. Liz touched on it, and thinking about those kids who end up in ninth grade at a school that not really want to be there. So they're transferring out at the first, open transfer window. And I think there's some things that we can do in community schools that I know are being done is really focusing in on that parent engagement around high school choice. So they get into 7th grade, they get into 8th grade. You can't wait until they get into really 8th grade in January and say, okay, Rudy, you want to go to high school? The high school fair is coming up in December. You really have to focus on it when they're in middle school. What interests you? What do you want to do? What do you have the aptitude to do? Where do you want to go after high school? Those are, you're trying to talk to a 13-year-old about what they're doing in high school or college. You think about that, but you have to plan. You really have to plan. So being able to have those things in place where you're working with parents or working with that school counselor to be able to identify those schools. I mean, I see it all the time where kids, it looks glamorous, then they go to a high school that has medical arts. You're like, I can't stand the sight of blood. I don't want to get into this anymore. So now they're transferring out to another high school. But being able to think about that when you're early on, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, then by the time you're making your choices in 8th grade, and you're satisfied with your choice for high school.
Thanks for that, Heidi. This is very into the weeds and definitely in the Baltimore City context, because the way that we've structured things really benefits families that are able to do that kind of planning. And I know for a lot of you who are from the surrounding counties and other regions of the state, there are some other questions that have come up in the Q&A, just trying to understand some of the supports for those larger structural barriers to attendance. So one question that came up in the chat, I think Heidi is really for you around this ACE program you mentioned. The question is this only in Central Maryland? And maybe just also beyond that specific program, what are the kinds of supports that you think if a county or region doesn't have that program, what should they be trying to build to support families around housing?
That's a really good question. And I know it's different probably in counties where, I mean, everywhere housing is an issue. It's a national issue. But I would just say, just really for community school coordinators, making sure they have a list of what's currently out there, staying up to date and abreast on who's doing what. You have a lot of nonprofits who could be in the housing space. Sometimes they have grant funding, sometimes they don't. A good place to always start is probably 211. 211 is statewide. So being able to call a resource like 211 to say, hey, we have a particular situation, in our community, but really working with nonprofits who are in that housing space could be very helpful. If you have housing developments that are around your school, getting to know that how that developer, getting to know the person who runs that, maybe it is like there's different housing organizations, but getting to know the people who work with that housing, whether it is the family engagement person who works for that, development or whatever, but there are people who you can contact just to get to know them. We have students who attend this school who live in your building. Just getting them involved with what's happening at your school. And that way, if conversations have to be had around this person is behind on their rent, then you have already established a relationship that maybe you can have a delay or something. But there are quite a few nonprofits that are in that housing space that'll be very helpful. And I'd like to see anyone in the chat if there's.
We just muted Heidi.
Heidi, you just meant after you said anyone.
And then you went in the.
Yeah, anyone in the chat, if you have any referrals, if you will, if you could put them in the chat, that would be great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Community school coordinators don't naturally come to the work thinking that they're going to connect with a housing developer, but absolutely that makes obvious sense. As soon as you get into these conversations with families where there's struggles with housing, turns out that is a sector that we have to. Actually, there's just a great article in a publication called Shelter Force, if you don't know it, that deals with housing. They just did a profile of the connections between education and housing. If I can find it, I'll drop it in the chat, but we can mail it out to all the attendees on the call. And they highlighted the connection that was made specifically in Maryland. So advocates worked this last year to get a housing assistance fund through the state legislature, which is still working on distribution of those funds, but those funds go through community schools to support families who are struggling with housing and rental assistance. And so it's possible, right? It's possible to advocate for those changes and to get support for families. The next question has to do with health supports. And the question is kind of focused about health supports, resources for students within the school building. And I'm also curious about that as an issue around attendance, what you've seen for in your work in community schools and how that is a potential barrier, how it's overcome, what your experience has been. So I guess for Dante or Heidi, either one of you want to take this one on.
Sure. So one of the things that when I first arrived at Ben Franklin, I noticed that the windows were boarded up and the entrance of the building was bricked in. And then I was wondering, is this a functioning school? And so when I entered it, it was actually a school. And but then, so I took the principal with me and I said, we need to do something. And so part of the exciting work that we were able to embark in subsequent years was raising $5 million to do renovations within the school. Because as you know, if the building is falling apart, if you cannot see outside, if there's not enough light, it really affects the health, the learning of the kids. We had mold, we had mildew, we had all of those things. And so we were able to do the necessary renovations. And then, thank goodness to the Baltimore Education Coalition, we were able to raise what, $1.2 billion to renovate some schools. And so, Heidi is now supervising some of the schools that were renovated. And so huge difference in terms of, so it's more than HEPA filters and washing stations. And then the United Way has also helped provide masks and other supports for schools, especially during the pandemic. But yeah, Heidi, please feel free to add things that I didn't get to mention.
Yeah, I think one of the best tools that a community school and community school coordinator has is the tool of the community school needs assessment. Being able to talk to stakeholders, whether it's students, staff, families, community members, about what those health challenges are. Unless you know what those health challenges are, you really don't know what resources you need to bring into that school or what partnerships you need to make that will create a win-win for the families, the school. You're trying to increase attendance or decrease mobility, and then also for that healthcare provider whose main goal and mission is to help people become more healthy. So that tool of that community school needs assessment and that implementation plan is key. Because you need to figure out really what's going on. Do you have a high rate of asthma? What is it being caused? Is it an environmental issue? Okay, if it's an environmental issue, there's like smokestacks that are, outside of your school and kids can't breathe. So now they have high rates of asthma, which means now they're either moving because the neighborhood is unhealthy, or maybe they're moving because, whatever the issue is. So, or they're chronically absent because of that, and then being able to bring those resources that really help the symptoms of that. But really, the issue is being able to have an advocacy group that really speaks to the pollution that this company is putting out in the community. So that needs assessment is key. Without that needs assessment, it's going to take you a lot longer, and you're going to be throwing a lot of resources at things that you really, on things that you really don't need. So I think that needs assessment is key in identifying what those health issues are. Then you're able to tackle it and to address it through those meaningful partnerships.
Ellie, can I respond to the housing program for community schools? It may not be a comprehensive intervention, but at Ben Franklin, when we started our homelessness prevention program, we were able, through the Seymour Institute, we were able to allocate funding, about $2,400 per family for 20 families to prevent them from getting evicted. And so we divvied up those resources to our schools at Baybrook, at Marie Faring, and the other feeder schools around us. So that program has been in functioning since 2012, and so far we have been able to stabilize families, up until today. It's still working, right, Heidi? So that's one of the most successful housing interventions, homelessness prevention interventions that we've had at in Baltimore with the United Way.
That's great. Thanks for lifting that up, Dante. One thing we haven't had a chance to really dig into on the call just yet is the relationship building practices that contribute to increasing attendance. So I wonder if either of you could speak to that for a moment. In what way does the community school engage in these relationship building practices, and how have you seen it impact student attendance?
Take it away, Heidi. You're a master at this.
You were the first master of this, so Dante used to be my mentor idol. I think it starts from the very moment that family, student, guardian, parent walks into that school. It starts the moment you walk into that school and that school secretary says, "Good morning, good afternoon. How can I help you? What is it that you need?" or whatever it is. That school secretary being able to say, as a triage person, that's a great question. I can connect you with our community school coordinator. That school secretary knowing what that community school coordinator does, that school leadership knowing what that community school coordinator does, so that they can send that person to you. And instead of saying, "I don't know," which turns off people, "We don't have that," which they probably do, but they may not know because there's no even connection and relationship between the staff in the school to be able to know that. So I really think it starts before you even enter the school, that very first step. But building relationships, finding any opportunity to engage with families, whether it is, standing outside, making yourself visible, standing outside at morning drop off, whether it's high school or whether it's an elementary school, being able to be highly visible so that people know who you are and that they know what you do. They always say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is absolutely true. Just being visible, letting people know what you do, and, small wins. You help a family, they'll sing the school's praises forever. They will put it on Facebook. "This school really helped me." That's how you get the 5-star ratings on Facebook or whatever that people are using these days. But really showing people that you care by showing up for them, by doing things with them, doing things for them, but mainly doing things with them. Because sometimes we fall into a trap where we enable people and, it's just like a sense of entitlement. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. So you really have to work with co-creating solutions with families. I do this part, you do that part, we come together, it's going to be wonderful. But really working with people, making sure you're visible, showing that you care, and them doing their part as much as they can do. Maybe they're not in a position to do their part right now, but just having that understanding that this is a relationship. That's the way relationships work. This is a relationship and a partnership.
Thanks, Heidi. Dante, did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I really love how Heidi does it, and she does it really effortlessly. I just want to give a shout out to Oprah Keys, the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Center for Restorative Change. You should invite her to speak on partnerships and how to energize that field. One of the things that I find is as coordinators, we have a particular role, not only to think about our families, but also to think about our partners. What do they need? What is their vision? And does that vision align with what you want for your school? And most of the time, they're actually aligned. So we just need to facilitate these meetups and ways to these encounters. And you'd be surprised how excited people are. And I'm so thankful for coordinators and directors and specialists that are really facilitating these things because they need a contact person that will nurture and develop that relationship. And so have fun getting to know your partners and getting to know, what is their why? Why are they in that neighborhood? And why do they want to be part of your school?
Thanks, Dante and Heidi. It's been so great to have your wisdom here shared this afternoon, not just with us, but all of our participants on the call today. I really, I know Ellie and I both appreciate your depth of knowledge and experience in the space. And just so you know, the research doesn't stop there, right? The work doesn't stop there. I know I see we have some announcements coming up. I'll just quickly say that for our part at the Maryland Center for Community Schools, our research is starting to find some positive effects for the community schools around school climate and culture and attendance. And we're going to be reporting those out publicly very soon to really underscore some of the research that Dante presented and the practice that Heidi spoke about today. So I'm really excited to bring that information to you on a statewide level so we can see the impact of this across Maryland. But I know we have some announcements in a few more minutes. So Ellie, I'll turn it to you.
So I just wanted to promote that the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools, our statewide coalition meeting will be next Friday. Is it next Friday? Is it this Friday? It's next Friday. It's next Friday. Thank you. The time is just marching at its own pace right now. Next Friday, I know because I will actually be in DC, but Bria will be running that meeting for everyone who participates. You can register through the QR code there. I think that's my only announcement. Jessica, I don't know if you wanted to add some announcements and put some things in the chat.
I will very quickly. I was also trying to respond to this last question, which is really great. And we only have, 3 minutes to answer it. So a much longer answer is required around a citywide strategy for chronic absenteeism. So I definitely want to catch up on this one. But all to say that we just put out the call for our conference on community schools that is coming up in March. If you haven't gotten the email about that or want the email for that, please email me or my program assistant, Amy Roche, who I know is here today. I do not have that at the tip of my fingers, which is my mistake. But that conference is live, available. There's a website. There's an opportunity for you all to present on the practices that you're engaged in as community school folks. Oh, great. Thanks. And it's a free conference. You do not have to pay a dime for it. It's a one-day conference, March 26, 2025. I'll lift up the United Way, who's one of our co-sponsors, along with the Y of Maryland and MSCA. So we're really excited to bring you that work in March 2025. Oh, and thanks, Amy, for putting our Instagram page in there too. And yes, follow us. We have a mailing list. We have lots of things to share with you. And the conference registration is in the chat as well. So at 12:59, I just want to say that thank you for all your questions. There's more to come on this topic. I feel like we just got started. There's so much more to say. And perhaps that in January, we will do a follow-up that digs into part 2 of attendance and community schools. But thank you for engaging in part 1 of this conversation. Thank you, Dante, Heidi, Ellie, everybody who's participated today. We appreciate you, and the recording will be coming shortly.
Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Dante. And thank you everyone for attending today. We hope you have we hope you have a wonderful holiday season coming ahead of you. Would love to see as many of you as we can on the 13th as well. So have a great one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.